stakeholders group to address concerns and obtain their input in this effort. At the end of the presentation, we will be seeking the committee's concurrence on proceeding to another public hearing on the Alden Road project. So with that, I will turn it over to Design Manager Wally Dietrich.
Not to undermine your credibility, Diane and I did not call one another to coordinate our efforts.
So I'm gonna agree.
Great taste in town.
We shop at the same place.
Thanks. What we want to do today is kind of bring everybody up to speed on what we've been doing over this last year as far as the continuation of our design process for the Alden Road Rehabilitation Project. Give you an update on what happened in our stakeholder meetings, some of the topics that we covered as far as safety in the pavement, what we did to reduce the impacts that we had originally showed last year, and get your direction to move forward. So this is kind of a timeline of what we were doing over the last year. If you recall, last August at the county board meeting, Jeff and Joe gave a presentation kind of explaining how we got to where we got to and what we were committing to do to continue the process. Part of that involved having a series of stakeholder group meetings, which we did have to engage the stakeholders, get their input, and help explain things to them so they could explain it to the people that they represent. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane, and she's going to kind of give you some details on what we did at those meetings and the rest of the process.
Thank you, Wally. The first thing we did was organize the stakeholders group. To date, we've held 3 stakeholder meetings. At the first meeting, we stated that the intent of this was to be a working meeting for the free exchange of ideas, focusing on where we are now and how we want to move forward. We talked about the purpose of being a stakeholder, being a bridge between that group and each individual specific interest group, and then bringing ideas back and forth between the groups. The purpose of the first meeting was to kick off the process. At that meeting, we did not yet have a lot of information, and we said that we would continue to engineer refinements to design the project so that we could reduce or eliminate impacts to residential properties and other sensitive areas, while still complying with good engineering practice concerning the safety of the road's users. This was the direction given to us by the county board. At the second stakeholder meeting, several topics were discussed, and we'll get into some of these topics in more detail in a minute. One of the issues brought up by the residents was what will happen to the zoning of the properties due to this project. General discussions included setback requirements and what happens when a parcel becomes non-conforming. When McHenry County buys right-of-way. Based on these questions asked, a decision was made to revisit this topic at a third stakeholder meeting and have someone from planning and zoning present to answer these questions. For crash statistics and right-of-way needs, we talked about some of the overlying crash trends over the last 5 years, as well as what we've done to reduce right-of-way impacts to the property owners. The main focus of the third stakeholder meeting was parcel zoning and setback requirements. Dennis Sandquist and Matt Hansel from Planning and Development attended the meeting to make a brief presentation regarding these issues and to answer questions. This meeting was held in the evening at the request of the stakeholders so that more residents along Alden Road would be able to attend. Next, we'll talk about some of the design issues that we discussed at the stakeholder meetings. The first is roadside safety. One of the things we discussed about the need for improvements is crash history. These 3 pictures represent locations where there were a high number of crashes along Alden Road. The first is the curve just south of State Line Road. The second is around Altenburg Road, and the third is just north of Macaulay Road. We analyzed crashes that occurred from 2003 through 2008. In particular, the data showed that runoff the road crashes were the most prevalent. There were 78 total crashes during that time. 3 out of every 4 was a runoff the road crash. When someone strays off the edge of the existing pavement, the tires get onto that steep, narrow shoulder, and it's hard to recover and come back onto the pavement. A A wider shoulder that is partly paved provides an additional measure of safety when this happens. Some of the stakeholders had concerns that some of the crashes had nothing to do with deficiencies of the road, but were due to other causes. And they asked us to provide some additional specific statistics. We determined that 5 out of those 78 crashes, or 6.5%, involved some alcohol or drug use. 22 out of the 78, or 28%, occurred with either snow or ice on the road. And 15 out of the 78, or 19%, were related to speeding. So a majority of the crashes were not related to DUI, snow and ice, or high speeds. Based on the analysis, the corrective measure to mitigate these crashes is to provide a wider shoulder. We also discussed pavement condition. First, we presented sort of a brief history of the road, which is shown here on this slide. Alden Road was originally paved in 1956 over a subbase made with soil cement. This is an older method of constructing a road, and it's good for low-volume rural roads. Due to the soil types along Alden Road, this method has led to less than adequate drainage. Water has seeped under the pavement and has caused rapid deterioration. Nearly the entire subbase has been leached away in a lot of areas. The stakeholders group asked why the road has shown more deterioration in recent years. This diagram illustrates how a condition of a pavement changes over its life. Typically, pavements have a 20-year design life. Many, probably most, last longer than that. Alden Road was paved 54 years ago. The actual life of the pavement depends on a number of things. The soil, providing support underneath, the climate, especially the freeze-thaw action, the amount of traffic, and the number of heavy trucks using the road. So this diagram shows that probably for the first 3/4 of its life, the pavement performs pretty well. Then after that, the condition starts to deteriorate. Here's another diagram, and the last one, that illustrates how the condition of the pavement changes over its life cycle. This shows how about halfway through a pavement's life, if you resurface it, it can extend the life by adding some structural support, but especially by sealing the surface against infiltration by water. Pavements are often resurfaced more than once, but eventually this provides diminishing benefits, and the road needs to be rebuilt. We also discussed our approach to reducing impacts to sensitive properties. Along Alden Road, there are a total of 149 separate parcels of property. Of these 149, 55 parcels are farmland, meaning they have crops planted along the frontage of Alden Road. The other 94 parcels are what we call non-farmland. The majority of these are residences along with a few commercial properties. In response to comments we received at the public hearing and subsequent county board meeting, we revisited the impacts to the residential and commercial properties. For safety reasons, we have maintained the county's desirable ditch cross-section, which includes gentler slopes along the farmland parcels to provide the most recoverable conditions possible. This slide and the next one provide examples of the design modifications we use to reduce right-of-way impacts. This example shows how we use underground drainage pipes rather than ditches to minimize the proposed right-of-way. The black line represents the center line of the roadway. The pink line is the existing right-of-way line. The green line is the originally proposed 60-foot right-of-way line, which would allow the desirable ditch design. The orange line shows a reduced 45-foot wide proposed right-of-way, which would be required to provide a minimum ditch design. Since the ditch designs requiring either the orange or the green right-of-way would have impacts to the house, we propose using a storm sewer pipe, shown in yellow, to capture the water running off the road instead of ditches. This eliminates the need for proposed right-of-way along the front of the house. This example is similar to the previous slide. The black line is the center line, the pink line is the existing right-of-way, and the green